The coffee shop was warm with afternoon light and the scent of fresh espresso. Julian Hayes sat at a corner table, checking his Rolex and scanning the entrance. At 39, he was CEO of Hayes International, accustomed to meetings that started precisely on time. His blind date was now 10 minutes late. When the door finally opened, he looked up expecting someone polished and professional, what his assistant had described as perfect for you, sir. Instead, he saw a young woman in her late 20s wearing faded jeans, a simple cream sweater that had clearly seen better days, and carrying a worn canvas backpack. Her light brown hair was pulled into a messy bun, she wore no makeup, and she looked exhausted. She scanned the coffee shop nervously until her eyes landed on Julian. Recognition flickered across her face, followed immediately by something that looked like resignation. She walked over slowly. "Julian Hayes?" she asked quietly. "Yes, you must be Claire?" "Claire Bennett. I'm so sorry I'm late. The bus broke down and I had to walk the last 6 blocks. She hesitated. "Your assistant said casual dress, but I'm realizing this place is nicer than I expected." "I didn't mean to underdress." Julian noticed she was holding a small wrapped package. "Please sit down. Can I get you something?" "Just water is fine," Claire said, sitting across from him. "I don't want to. Coffee here is expensive and I'm buying," Julian said gently. "Order whatever you'd like." Claire looked at the menu, clearly calculating costs. "A small regular coffee, please." "Thank you." After ordering, Julian studied Claire more carefully. She looked like she hadn't slept well, her clothes were clean but worn, and she kept fidgeting with the wrapped package. "Your assistant was very kind to set this up," Claire said. "I should tell you up front, I'm probably not what you expected. I'm a social worker. I make about $30,000 a year. I live in a studio apartment with my younger sister who I'm raising because our parents died. I take the bus everywhere because I don't own a car. And I'm only here because your assistant was so insistent. But I'm guessing you're looking for someone more successful." Julian was quiet for a moment, then said, "Why did you bring a gift?" Claire looked at the package in her hands. "Your assistant mentioned it was your birthday this week. I made cookies. It's not much, but I believe showing up to meet someone empty-handed is rude." She slid the package across the table. "I know it's not fancy. You probably get expensive gifts all the time." Julian unwrapped the simple brown paper to find a tin of homemade cookies with a handwritten note. "Happy birthday." "Claire, you made these?" "I bake when I'm stressed. It helps me think." She smiled slightly. "I was very stressed about this date." Julian opened the tin and took a cookie. It was delicious, perfectly baked, clearly made with care. "These are incredible. Thank you. You don't have to pretend." "I'm not pretending. These are the best cookies I've had in years." He meant it. "When did you make them?" "Last night after work. I got home around 9, my sister needed help with homework. Then I baked until midnight because I couldn't sleep anyway." "Why couldn't you sleep?" Claire looked embarrassed. "Because I was nervous about meeting you. Your assistant showed me your photo and mentioned you're a CEO and successful, and I knew I had no business being here. But she was so kind, and she said you specifically wanted to meet someone real, whatever that means." "It means exactly you," Julian said quietly. Over the next hour, Claire opened up. She was a social worker for at-risk youth, working with kids in foster care and difficult home situations. She'd been raising her 15-year-old sister Sophie since their parents died in an accident 3 years ago. She worked extra shifts, took the bus everywhere, and survived on a tight budget so Sophie could have stability and opportunities. "I'm sorry," Claire said at one point. "I'm probably boring you with my problems." "You didn't sign up for a therapy session. You're not boring me," Julian said. "You're fascinating." "Tell me about Sophie." Claire's face lit up. "She's brilliant. Straight A's, wants to be a doctor. I'm saving everything I can for her college fund. She deserves every chance I can give her." "At the expense of your own life?" "She is my life," Claire said simply. "Our parents left us some money, but it's in a trust for Sophie's education. I won't touch it. She gets to have dreams. I'm just making sure she reaches them." Julian had never met anyone like Claire. She wore thrift store clothes and lived in poverty, but she had more dignity and purpose than anyone in his wealthy social circle. "Can I ask you something?" Julian said. "Why did you agree to this date? You clearly didn't think it would go anywhere." Because your assistant, Jennifer, she caught me on a really hard day. I'd just lost a client. A kid I'd been working with got sent back to an abusive home because the system failed. I was crying in the courthouse hallway. She sat with me for an hour. Just listened. Then she mentioned her boss was looking for someone genuine, someone who cared about people more than status. She said you'd understand my work because you came from nothing too. She told you that? She said you built your company from scratch after growing up poor. That you never forgot where you came from. Claire met his eyes. Is that true? Yes, Julian admitted. My mother raised me alone. We lived in a trailer park. She worked 3 jobs. I built my company so she could retire comfortably. She died before I could give her everything I wanted to. I'm so sorry. She'd like you, Julian said. She'd say you're doing for Sophie what she did for me, sacrificing everything so someone else can have more. They talked until the coffee shop started closing. Julian learned about Claire's kids, the teenagers she counseled, the families she tried to keep together, the system she fought against daily. Claire learned about Julian's foundation supporting foster youth, his affordable housing initiatives, his quiet philanthropy that he never publicized. You give away millions, Claire said, amazed. Your assistant didn't mention that. Because I don't do it for recognition. I do it because I remember what it's like to have nothing. You understand that. You live it every day. As they prepared to leave, Julian made a decision. Can I see you again? Maybe meet Sophie? Have dinner at your place? Claire looked shocked. You want to come to my tiny studio apartment? After I showed up here looking like I have nothing? You don't have nothing, Julian said firmly. You have integrity, compassion, and purpose. You made me birthday cookies after working a 12-hour day because you thought showing up empty-handed would be rude. You're raising your sister alone while working with at-risk kids. You took the bus and walked 6 blocks to meet a stranger. That's not nothing, Claire. That's everything. Over the following months, Julian became part of Claire and Sophie's lives. He helped with Sophie's college applications, supported Claire's work, discovered that the small studio apartment held more warmth than his penthouse ever had. Why me? Claire asked one evening after Sophie was asleep. You could date anyone. Someone wealthy who fits your world. You showed up to our first date looking like you had nothing, Julian said. Worn clothes, no car, living paycheck to paycheck. Every other woman I've met wore designer labels and pretended to be perfect. You showed up as yourself, exhausted, honest, carrying homemade cookies because you were raised to believe in courtesy over wealth. That moment, I saw everything I'd been looking for my entire life. I was so embarrassed. You were perfect. You had nothing material, but you had everything that actually matters. Kindness, integrity, selflessness. You reminded me why I built my company, what success is actually for. Not accumulation, but impact. A year after that first meeting, Julian proposed, not with an expensive ring, but with a commitment to support Sophie through medical school and to build a life where Claire could continue her social work without financial stress. At their wedding, Julian told their story to emotional guests. Claire arrived at our blind date looking like she had nothing, he explained. Old clothes, no car, living in poverty while raising her teenage sister and working with at-risk kids. While others might have seen someone struggling, I saw everything I'd ever wanted. Someone who understood that wealth isn't measured in possessions, but in purpose. Someone who'd sacrifice everything for those she loves. Someone real in a world of performance. Claire added, I thought I'd ruined everything by showing up looking poor and exhausted. But Julian saw past my circumstances to who I was. Someone trying to make a difference despite having limited resources. He didn't see what I lacked. He saw what I valued. That changed everything. Years later, they'd tell Sophie, now a successful doctor, about that first date. Your sister was terrified, Julian would say. She showed up in old clothes, brought homemade cookies, apologized for not being successful enough. She thought she had nothing to offer. But she offered me everything I'd been missing. Authenticity, compassion, purpose. The cookies were good, Sophie would joke. The cookies were perfect, Julian would correct. Not because of taste, but because they represented who your sister is. Someone who shows up for people with whatever she has, even when it's not much. That's the person I fell in love with. Someone who looked like she had nothing but actually had everything. Because sometimes having nothing material means having everything essential. Sometimes worn clothes and homemade cookies are worth more than designer labels and expensive gifts. And sometimes, the person who shows up apologizing for not being enough is exactly enough, not despite their circumstances, but because their circumstances reveal character that transcends wealth. If this story touched your heart, share and subscribe for more tales about seeing value beyond surface appearances. Comment about someone who saw your worth when you felt worthless. Those people who look past what we lack to see what we offer, they're the ones who change our lives forever.